I was kidnapped at the same time as the female lead. Aiden and the child both chose to save her first. The child's young voice carried a faint trace of disdain. Dad said that mom has a system anyway, she won't die. The next second, the kidnappers threw me into the sea. And that night, the headline news read, "Hidden wife of Chan Group CEO falls into the sea and dies." But Aiden and I were never married. He once said he would never marry me. 3 months later, I ran into them, father and son, by accident while holding my daughter's hand. My daughter let out a soft huh. "Mommy, why is that boy looking at you and crying?" Without even glancing their way, I replied, "I don't know. I don't know him." Chapter 1. When Anna and I were hanging over the edge of a cliff, the system was leisurely comforting me. "Don't worry, host. As long as there's still one person in this world who would choose you in a moment of danger, I'll always be your system, staying by your side and protecting you." That was its binding condition. The cold wind lashed against my face, stinging sharply, expressionless. I reminded it. Aiden will only choose his Anna. The system sounded so relaxed that I could practically imagine it sipping afternoon tea like a rich socialite. I know, but your son came too, they'll be here any second. Your son wouldn't abandon you to choose someone else, right? As long as he chooses you, even if you're thrown into the sea, I'll make sure you land safely on shore." I didn't respond, but I had a faint feeling that Colin wouldn't choose me either. Chapter 2. A month ago, the news, Chan Group CEO Aiden Chan and heiress Anna are about to tie the knot. Suspected to be preparing for an engagement, shot to the top of trending searches. That night, when Aiden returned from the company, Colin rushed over and shoved him hard with his small hands. "I don't want you as my dad anymore. This is my home with mommy, you're not allowed to come in." Aiden frowned slightly. "What are you throwing a tantrum about now?" Tears streamed down Colin's face, but he still stubbornly glared at him. "Today I heard the nanny say you're going to marry another lady and have a new baby. You don't want mommy and me anymore." I had just walked out of the kitchen and saw the scene. I hurried over, pulling the furious and aggrieved little Colin into my arms to comfort him. Clinging to my neck, Colin burst into tears. "Mommy, we don't want daddy anymore either." His soft little hands held onto me tightly as he sobbed in broken gasps. "I'll drive him out." "Colin won't let him bully mommy." Aiden narrowed his eyes slightly, staring straight at me. A faintly mocking smile tugged at his lips. "Colin, why don't you ask your dear mother what she did?" I met his gaze, gently patting Colin's back. I spoke calmly. "I've already explained that matter." Aiden tugged at his tie, then lowered his eyes to remove his wristwatch. Without even lifting his head, he said flatly, "You can ask your son whether he believes you." Colin let go of me, tears still clinging to his eyelashes. He turned back and shouted, "Mommy would never do anything bad." Aiden tossed his watch onto the sofa. "Is that so?" Colin barely reached above his knee. Yet even when speaking to his own son, Aiden couldn't be bothered to bend down. He simply stood there straight, looking down at him. Does almost getting someone killed count as doing something bad? Little Colin froze. Chapter 3. A few days ago, Aiden saw with his own eyes as I drove my car straight into Anna. "Anna!" He rushed across the street like a madman, not caring about anything else. He scooped Anna up from the pool of blood. His shirt was stained red, but it was nothing compared to the terrifying crimson in his eyes. His gaze swept over me in the car, so shocked I couldn't even speak. As if he were looking at a dead person, the system let out a sigh. "I'm sorry." Crashing into Anna is part of the plot you must follow as the villainous supporting female character. If you refuse, I can only take control of your body to complete the storyline. That day, when I got home, I had a huge fight with the system. I was so furious that I didn't even notice Aiden standing at the door, listening to everything. He found out that I approached him for the sake of a mission. He also learned that because the system protects me, no matter how badly I'm injured, I won't die. Chapter 4. After Aiden calmly told everything to our son, he seemed to recall something and looked at Colin with a faint smile. "How much do you think she really loves you? If you weren't a boy, do you think she would still want you?" I tried to take Colin back to his room, but Aiden grabbed my wrist forcefully. He pulled me in front of him without allowing any resistance, studying me with a playful expression. "What are you hiding from? Feeling guilty?" I couldn't break free, only a pale explanation remained. I told you a long time ago. I don't favor boys over girls. Colin tilted his head, looking at Aiden and then at me. In the end, he walked over to me and tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, what is Daddy talking about? Colin doesn't understand. A child's instinctive closeness soothed my chaotic emotions a little. I thought he believed me. I crouched down in front of him, wanting to explain, when I heard Aiden say, when she was pregnant with you, she had your gender tested. Colin froze, staring at me. He pressed his lips together, his round little face puffing up slightly, as if he couldn't understand what Aiden meant. Chapter 5. I once had a stage mission to gain Aiden's mother's approval. The system said that once I completed it, I would never again be forced to follow the plot. I could pursue things freely, but Aiden's mother looked down on my background, holding her coffee cup. She said casually, "If you give birth to a son, I'll allow you to enter the Chan family." That was essentially her form of approval. After I got pregnant with Colin, I couldn't wait to pull some strings to get a test done. During that time, the storyline had nearly driven me insane. As the villainous supporting female character, I was forced to do many things I didn't want to do. Aiden's mother was satisfied when she saw the test results, and I was also judged to have completed the stage mission. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Later, Aiden saw that report, but he didn't know about the stage mission. He only thought I was obsessed with having a son, doing everything I could to marry into a wealthy family. With a cold laugh, Aiden threw that paper in my face, his eyes filled with indifference and disappointment. Why would I ever get involved with a woman as disgusting as you? So he refused to marry me, yet also refused to let me go. He kept me tied to him like this, while remaining ambiguously entangled with Anna. Chapter 6. Colin seemed to understand, yet not quite. He lifted his soft little hand and grasped my fingers. Mommy, so if Colin weren't a boy, would Mommy not want me anymore? He didn't listen to a single word Aiden said, he only looked at me with hope. I knew that as long as I denied it, everything would be fine, because Colin trusted me unconditionally. But in the end, all I gave him was silence. At that time, I was on the verge of breaking down, desperate to escape the fate of being controlled. If the test had shown a girl, I truly couldn't guarantee that I wouldn't have chosen to abort him. As the atmosphere grew heavy and suffocating, the color drained from Colin's face. He stood frozen, then slowly let go of my hand. I panicked and grabbed his hand again. But Mommy loves you very much now. Colin can feel it, right? Colin just shook his head over and over as he stepped back, his eyes gradually filling with tears. Flustered, I reached out to pull him back, trying to explain, Colin, but when he couldn't push me away, he suddenly lowered his head and bit down on my wrist. The moment I let go, he ran back to his room without looking back. I knelt on the carpet, silently staring at the faintly bleeding bite mark on my wrist. Aiden sat on the sofa, watching everything coldly, his eyes filled with a mocking clarity, as if he had long seen through it all. Suddenly, I couldn't bear it anymore. Supporting myself against the sofa, I stood up and asked him, "You and Anna, are you getting married?" Aiden lifted his eyes slightly. "What does that have to do with you?" At this point, none of his sharp, cutting words stirred any emotion in me anymore, only numbness remained. "I'll make room for you and Anna. I'll take Colin and move out." He remained indifferent. "Don't even think about it." Aiden stood up and walked over to me. He wrapped an arm around my waist, doing the most intimate gesture, yet his eyes were full of disdain. "Even if I marry Anna, I'll have her live in a new house. Do you think I'd let her live somewhere you've lived? I'd find it dirty on her behalf. And as for you," he released me abruptly, then pulled out a wet tissue to wipe the hand that had touched me, deliberately humiliating me. "If you're willing to give up Colin, you can leave any time." My emotions completely collapsed. Crying, I demanded, "Why, Aiden? I haven't wronged you. I truly liked you." The only response I got was the cold sound of the bedroom door slamming shut. Chapter 7. I knew Colin was deeply bothered by this, so I tried every possible way to cheer him up and apologize to him. But again and again, he avoided me, until that time, when the nanny took 2 hours off. I went to pick him up from school myself. Since I arrived 20 minutes early, the kindergarten hadn't dismissed yet. And then I saw My son, together with Aiden and Anna, holding hands, participating in a parent-child activity inside the kindergarten. The atmosphere was so warm and harmonious, like a real family. Just as overwhelming sorrow was about to drown me, I instead grew strangely calm, like a walking corpse. I followed them the whole way, watching the two of them pick Colin up, take him out to eat. I saw Colin holding Anna's hand, looking at her seriously, though his voice was still childish. Auntie Anna, I apologize to you on behalf of my mom. You're a super nice girl. Colin really likes you. Anna crouched down in front of him and gently rubbed his little face. How much do you like me? Do you like me more than you like your mommy? Colin pressed his lips together, hesitating as he lowered his head. It was as if I already knew what he was about to say. I immediately turned and walked into a nearby women's clothing store, escaping from the answer I couldn't bear to hear. Chapter 8. Pathetically, when I got home, I still pretended nothing had happened, deceiving myself. I thought, it's okay, Colin is just still upset with me. Once I explain things clearly, he'll understand. What he means to me is truly different from Aiden. He genuinely loved me for 5 whole years, always putting me first. When Aiden said cutting things to me, he would immediately climb onto me and cover my ears with both hands. Mommy, don't listen. Mommy, don't listen. After he turned 4, he thought he had grown up. Whenever Aiden and I argued, he even started to hit him. Even though his strength was negligible, it was the only source of love I had felt in these past 5 years. Chapter 9. However, they brought Anna back with them. Anna had fainted from hypoglycemia. Aiden carried her back here. Colin only glanced at me briefly before immediately running after Aiden again. Worried, the nanny made a cup of sugar water, but her hand had just been scalded by the kettle, making it hard for her to hold it steady. I took the cup from her and said gently, "There's burn ointment in the medicine box. Go apply some, I'll take this upstairs for you." She quickly thanked me. "You're such a kind person." But the people closest to me didn't think so. When I entered the guest room with the sugar water, Anna was the only one there, still unconscious on the bed. I placed the cup on the bedside table. At that moment, the door behind me was pushed open. "What are you doing?" I turned around and met Colin's wary gaze. My son walked past me, went over, and pushed the cup of water aside. Standing by the bed, he gently lifted the blanket and covered Anna's exposed arm. Only then did he turn his back to me and speak in a cold voice I had never heard before. "Auntie Anna is a good person. Don't hurt her again. Mom, you should apologize to Auntie Anna. And stop being a bad person." All my thoughts of explaining myself came to a halt just like that. Chapter 10. After that, Colin and Anna grew closer and closer. The 3 of them looked more and more like a real family. During that time, I lived in a daze, slowly peeling away my attachment to him, piece by piece, until now, hanging at the edge of the cliff, I heard Colin say, "Dad, tell them to let Auntie Anna down quickly." Anyway, he glanced at me quickly, then tugged at Aiden's pants. "Anyway, Mom has a system. She won't get hurt or die." I only felt disheartened, without much sadness left. But the system panicked. "Wait, what? Why did he abandon you? Aren't you his mom?" "It's over. It's over. This means I have to unbind from you. If you fall, I can't save you anymore. What are we going to do?" Aiden looked at me quietly. "Don't you want to say something? For example, beg me to choose you." I didn't respond, only gazing calmly at the sea below, as if I were about to be freed. Aiden curled his lips mockingly. "Your choice." Then he said coldly to the kidnappers, "Let Anna go." The next second, the rope tied to my wrist was cut. I fell straight into the sea, without leaving a single word for Aiden or Colin. At the same time, the familiar mechanical voice sounded in my mind. The system no longer carried any emotion, cold and detached. Just like when it first notified me upon entering this world. "Host has lost the binding condition. You are now abandoned in this virtual world." Chapter 11. I practically slammed into the water, the impact hitting my body hard. It felt like my bones had fallen apart. With great effort, I untied the rope in the water, finally stretching free as I struggled to swim upward. On the nearest shore, Aiden's men were standing there, peering into the sea as if searching for something. Without hesitation, I swam toward the opposite shore. Because of the distance and the injuries from the fall, it was extremely difficult. By the time I reached land, I was too exhausted to even stand. I don't know how long passed. The sun set, and the biting wind struck my drenched body. The temperature dropped sharply, and I shivered from the cold. Finally, I staggered to my feet, dragging my heavy body forward, step by step, leaving this suffocating place behind, and deciding never to look back. Chapter 12. The moment before Anna was about to be thrown to the ground by the kidnappers, Aiden caught her and pulled her into his arms. Colin also immediately ran over, concerned about Anna. No one looked at the woman who had fallen into the sea. Only after Anna was carried into the car and the accompanying doctor briefly checked her and confirmed she was fine did Colin suddenly remember. Hesitantly, he tugged at Aiden's sleeve. "Dad, where's Mom?" Without turning his head, Aiden reached out to check Anna's temperature. "She'll be back soon." There was a faint trace of cold mockery in his indifferent voice. "I arranged for people on the shore to pick her up." Colin pressed his lips together, feeling like a long time had already passed. But Mom still hadn't come back. He stopped looking at Anna and ran to the roadside to wait for Francesca. As it grew late, even Aiden sensed something was wrong. His voice turned heavy as he called the bodyguards and rescue team stationed there. "What's going on, boss?" We haven't been able to retrieve Madam." Aiden's mind instantly fell into chaos. "Say that again. Please don't worry, no body means good news. We'll keep searching." "Shut up." Aiden's voice turned icy. "If I hear that word again, you'll personally jump in and look for her." How could Francesca possibly be dead? Aiden found these people ridiculous. She had the system protecting her, and when she was hanging off the cliff just now, she had been so calm, even as he came up with countless reasons why Francesca wouldn't die. His hands still trembled uncontrollably. Another half-hour passed. Everyone on the shore had returned. Francesca was not among them. They stood in front of Aiden, drenched and disheveled. "Sorry, boss. Madam was probably swept away by the waves. We didn't find her body on any nearby beaches." Aiden stood motionless, as if he hadn't heard a single word. Colin's face turned pale, his voice weak. "Excuse me, what does swept away by the waves mean?" "It means, your mom won't be coming back." The reporter changed to a more tactful phrasing. In the next instant, Colin fainted right in front of them. Chapter 13. Colin woke up in his own room. He remembered everything in this little room had been arranged together with his mom. The nanny was feeding him some water. "Colin, you're awake." Her expression was full of sorrow, as if she had just been crying. But Colin didn't notice. He immediately climbed out of bed and ran to his mother's bedroom. He wanted to tell her he had a very scary nightmare. He dreamed that Mom had fallen into the sea. It felt so real. Every time he had a nightmare, he would hug his blanket and run to sleep with her. This time was no exception. Barefoot, he padded over to the bedroom door, standing on tiptoe to twist the handle open. "Mom!" The room was silent and dark. No one was there. Colin stood frozen at the doorway. The nanny caught up at that moment. Colin didn't turn around, he just stared blankly into the room. "Grandma Lee, where did Mom go?" The nanny couldn't hold back her sobs anymore and burst into tears. "She's gone." Colin remained standing there quietly. The light stretched his shadow long across the floor. After a long time, when the hallway had become empty, he finally spoke in a small voice. "Mom didn't die. She just doesn't want me anymore." Chapter 14. Late at night, I wandered aimlessly along an empty street. I didn't know how long I had been walking. My body grew hotter and hotter, yet I still felt unbearably cold. My consciousness gradually blurred, until I completely lost it. When I woke up again, I found myself still lying in the same place, my head pounding as if it were splitting apart. But there was a tattered blanket covering me. "Why, you're awake." I hadn't noticed anyone nearby and was startled into a shiver. Following the voice, I realized it was coming from a half-human height trash bin behind me. The lid was slightly open, revealing a pair of bright, clear eyes. "Did you cover me with this blanket?" The little trash bin seemed to finally confirm I wasn't a bad person. She nimbly jumped out from inside. She walked up to me, crouched down, and nodded vigorously. "MHM." She was a dirty little girl, about the same age as Colin. For a brief second, a thought flashed through my mind: what kind of reaction would they have after I disappeared? But I quickly forced myself to stop and focused on the girl in front of me. "What are you doing in a trash bin?" Her eyes sparkled with hope as she explained earnestly. "I heard the lady at the vegetable market telling her son that she picked him up from a trash bin, so I'm waiting here for my mom to come pick me up too." I froze, not expecting anyone to still believe something like that. Her dusty little face flushed slightly as she said shyly, "If no one comes to pick me up today, I'll have to move somewhere else. There's no food here. I'm really hungry. If I can't find anything to eat, I'll have to eat that cake." She pointed with her small hand toward a moldy sponge cake nearby. Maybe it was because my fever had muddled my mind. For some reason, I found myself staring at her and asking, "I'll pick you up, okay? Do you want to come home with me?" After a long pause, a small, grimy hand cautiously rested in my equally unclean palm. "Does that mean I'll have a mom now?" "Yes." "Wow. Renee has a mom now." Chapter 15. I took Renee to my small apartment in the suburbs. I had bought it a long time ago. Even Aiden didn't know about this place. It was 40 kilometers away from the Chan family villa in the city. That night, a news notification popped up on my phone. Out of habit, I tapped it. According to reports, the Chan Group has issued an obituary. The hidden wife of Chan Group CEO Aiden has unfortunately fallen into the sea and passed away today. I let out a faint laugh at the phrase hidden wife. He had clearly said he would never marry someone as disgusting as me. Chapter 16. After completing Renee's adoption procedures, I lived here peacefully for 3 months, until that day, when I took her into the city to handle her identity documents, and ran into Aiden and Colin on the street. Both of their expressions changed instantly. I only paused for a moment before calmly looking away. Taking Renee with me, I turned and walked in the opposite direction. Renee kept tilting her head. She gently tugged at my hand and let out a soft huh. "Mommy, look over there. Why is that boy staring at you and crying?" I didn't turn back. My voice was so indifferent, as if I were talking about strangers. I don't know them." Behind me, the boy suddenly burst into loud sobs. He didn't say a single word, he just stood there and cried. Instead, it was Aiden who called out to me hoarsely, "Francesca, are you really going to watch him cry himself unconscious here?" I stopped in my tracks, but then I heard Colin immediately choke back his sobs. His voice trembled as he struggled to suppress his crying, pleading with Aiden, "Dad. Colin. Colin won't cry anymore. Please take Colin home. Colin wants to go home. Colin wants to go home." I guessed that Colin probably didn't want to see me either, so I quickened my pace as I walked away. Chapter 17. Because handling the paperwork would take some time, I took Renee to stay temporarily in that small 2-bedroom apartment. That afternoon, I had just coaxed Renee to sleep when my phone suddenly rang with an unfamiliar number. I stepped out to the balcony and picked up the call. "It's me." It was Aiden's voice. I wasn't surprised that he had tracked down my new number so quickly. "Was faking your death fun, Francesca? Watching everyone panic over you, cry for you, did it give you a sense of accomplishment?" His voice turned cold. "Are you still not planning to come home?" I gazed into the distance and asked softly, "How are you so sure I faked my death and didn't almost die for real?" He let out a light laugh. "How could you possibly die? Doesn't that thing always protect you? The system has unbound from me. It's gone completely, because in this world, not a single person chose me, so it had no reason to choose me either." I told him how I had almost died in the sea that day, and almost died again by the roadside. "So what makes you think I'd still go back?" After a long silence, Aiden finally spoke in a low voice. "Francesca, you have to come back. Colin is sick." I refused calmly. "The Chan family can hire the best doctors for him. It's depression." Colin was diagnosed with severe depression today. Chapter 18. When I arrived at the Chan residence, I had just pushed the door open a crack when I heard Colin's voice. "Grandma Lee, give Colin another bowl of rice." The boy's voice was clearly filled with excitement. I stood at the doorway and let out a cold, mocking laugh. Depression? It was nothing more than an excuse Aiden used to trick me into coming back. Just as I was about to turn and leave, I heard their conversation again. Colin, you haven't been eating much lately. Suddenly eating this much isn't good for your stomach. It's okay. I have to eat more. If I don't get sick anymore, Dad will let me secretly go see Mommy. The nanny let out a sigh. I also heard Madam is alive. She'll definitely come home. Why do you need to sneak to see her? There was nearly half a minute of silence. When Colin spoke again, his voice was much softer, almost emotionless, like he was stating a fact. Mom won't come back. She already doesn't want me and Dad anymore. Seeing me would make her unhappy. Colin doesn't want Mommy to be unhappy. So I'll just hide and secretly look at her. I stood frozen in place, my eyes stinging uncontrollably. Only after studying my emotions did I push the door open and walk in. Madam, why you're back? Colin, sitting at the table, immediately looked up at me in disbelief. It had been 3 months. I felt a bit awkward too. Colin jumped off his chair and walked over to me. Mom. He looked up at me, his lips slightly chapped. Yet he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Just then, Aiden came out from the study on the second floor, his gaze sweeping over me. You came like this? I met his eyes directly. Is there a problem? Where's your luggage? I never agreed to move back to the Chan residence. Colin's expression instantly shifted from joy to helplessness. When he noticed I was looking at him, he quickly lowered his head, hiding the tears welling up in his eyes. Aiden stared at me. I didn't back down. After less than a minute of silent confrontation, Aiden finally let out a heavy breath, as if calming himself. Come upstairs to my study. We need to talk. Chapter 19. Inside Aiden's study, he leaned back against the desk. Today is the first time in a month that Colin finished an entire bowl of food. He looked down at me from above, his gaze dark and unreadable. If you don't come back, are you planning to watch him die? I thought for a moment. I can take him to my place and help him recover for a while. For a while? Aiden narrowed his eyes at me. What do you mean? It means that once he gets better, I'll send him back. A mocking smile tugged at his lips. He was about to say something when I cut him off. What? Are you going to call me heartless? Wasn't it you who abandoned me, gave up on me, and watched me go to my death? Aiden's expression darkened. He pressed his lips together, staring at me. After the emotional turmoil of the day, I was already completely drained, too exhausted to keep entangling with him. Taking his silence as agreement, I picked up my bag and turned to leave. We didn't, Aiden said. Colin and I, we just thought you wouldn't die. I smiled faintly. Right, because I wouldn't die. I can be sent to die over and over again. Aiden didn't say anything more. Chapter 20. When I came downstairs from the study, Colin was sitting upright on the sofa, tears still clinging to his lashes. Mom. He gave me a tentative, ingratiating smile. I still didn't know what attitude I should take toward him, so I tried to stay as calm as possible. Colin, would you like to stay with Mom for a while? His small hands rested on his knees, clenching into little fists before loosening again anxiously. Can I? I nodded. He instinctively wanted to reach for my hand, but hesitated and lowered it. Colin wants to go. After the nanny packed his things, I took him with me. The guest room in my apartment happened to have 2 small single beds. The 2 kids got along fairly well, so I arranged for them to sleep together. But just as I tucked them in and turned off the lights to leave, Renee called out to me. Can Renee sleep with Mommy? Renee is scared of the dark. For the past 3 months, Renee had been sleeping with me. Without thinking too much, I walked over and lifted her out of the blanket. Of course, Mommy will carry you. Colin was too quiet. So quiet that I only noticed, just before turning off the lights, that he had been lying there obediently under the blanket, blinking as he watched me and Renee. I suddenly remembered that he used to be a little afraid of the dark too. Hesitating, I asked, Colin, are you still afraid of the dark? He gave a small smile and hugged the teddy bear in his arms a little tighter. Colin has the teddy bear Mommy bought for me. I'm not scared. I didn't ask any further. I turned off the light and carried Renee out. Then I took out the fairy tale book I had bought that day, gently patting her back as I read to her until she fell asleep. Only then did I lie down as well. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty. I got up and went to the living room for some water. The moment I opened the door, I was startled. Colin was wrapped in a blanket, curled up asleep right outside my bedroom door. I quickly picked him up and carried him back to the guest room. Colin half opened his eyes drowsily, then closed them again and wrapped his arms around my neck. Clearly still asleep, he nuzzled into the crook of my neck and murmured with a soft smile, "That's nice." In my dream, Mommy belongs only to me. Silently, I placed him back on the bed. I reached out to check his forehead and stomach. After confirming his temperature was normal, I looked down at his small face, so similar to Aiden's. I would never forget what he said at the cliff. And yet, he always managed to touch the softest part of my heart. I could be resolute toward Aiden, but with Colin, I could never quite bring myself to be cruel. Chapter 21. I had always wanted to have an honest conversation with Colin about his depression, but Aiden said the doctor advised against bringing it up directly, it could easily trigger him. I didn't know how to interact with this version of Colin. He was completely different from before, so well-behaved that it made me think of the abandoned pet effect, a child who becomes overly compliant out of fear of being rejected again. In the first few days after he came, he tried to please me in every possible way, doing everything he could and even things he shouldn't. If he accidentally dropped crumbs on the sofa or carpet while eating snacks, he would pick them up bit by bit with his small hands, and the next time he ate, he would be even more careful, holding one hand under his mouth to catch any crumbs, eating cautiously. No matter how many times I told him it was okay, he wouldn't listen. This version of Colin made me uncomfortable. He even took the initiative to bring foot washing water for me and Renee. His small body swayed as he carried the basin toward us. "Renee, come here, big brother will wash your feet." Renee frowned, grabbed the basin from him, and set it down heavily. "Colin, what are you doing? I can do my own things. Why are you always working?" Colin smiled awkwardly. Even though he didn't argue, he still kept doing it anyway. Finally, one day, when he insisted on washing his own bowl, he accidentally broke it. I hurried into the kitchen. "Colin, don't move. Mommy will clean it up." Colin immediately crouched down to pick up the shards. "Mommy, don't come over, you'll get cut. I'll clean it up right away." Afraid he'd get hurt, I reached for the broken glass before him, and accidentally cut my finger. Hiss! Bright red blood quickly welled up. Colin panicked and immediately apologized. "Mommy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." After that, he stopped rushing to do everything, but became even more cautious than before. He started passively accepting things. When Renee couldn't play a game by herself and pulled him to join, he never refused. The two children had similar tastes. Whenever there was a dish they both liked, he would always give the last portion to Renee. He no longer acted spoiled with me like before, nor did he make any requests. The only time he did was casually mentioning that he had left his drawing book at the Chan house. When I went back in the evening to retrieve it for him, I happened to run into Aiden and Anna getting out of their car. Chapter 22. Anna was drunk, leaning against Aiden, pointing at me as she spoke drowsily. "Huh? Why are you at my house?" Seeing this scene, I wasn't surprised. I explained calmly. "I came to get Colin's drawing book. I'll leave now." Aiden pulled Anna away from him. His usually distant expression now carried a trace of tension. "Francesca, you misunderstood. Anna is just..." Without looking at him, I walked past and interrupted indifferently. "It has nothing to do with me." I had only taken a few steps when Aiden caught up and grabbed my wrist. "What do you mean it has nothing to do with you?" I looked at him, confused, and asked in return, "What does it have to do with me? Wasn't it you who said your engagement with Anna had nothing to do with me?" Irritation flashed across Aiden's brows. "Anna and I are not engaged, and there's nothing ambiguous between us." He stared at me without blinking. "All this time, you've been the only woman I've had." I grew impatient and looked away. "I don't want to hear it. You have to." Aiden wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me firmly against him. "Francesca, let's get married." His voice was slightly strained. "I've only just realized, I can't live without you. But I can live without you." I looked at him as if he were ridiculous. "I don't love you anymore. Why would I marry you?" In his moment of stunned silence, I finally pushed him away. Aiden's lips moved slightly. What do you mean you don't love me anymore? I let out a soft laugh. So you still think that during those 5 years, when you gave me the cold shoulder and kept appearing in headlines with Anna, I still loved you? The only reason I stayed was because I couldn't leave Colin, but fortunately, he's no longer part of my future plans either. I smiled, feeling relieved. I can finally be completely free from the Chan family. Is that really how you've always felt? Aiden lowered his eyes, a self-mocking smile tugging at his lips. But I didn't, Francesca. I always treated you as my wife. I pretended not to hear him and walked away in silence. So this was what it meant to be Aiden's wife for a lifetime. I could only hope there wouldn't be another victim after me. Chapter 23. Colin gradually became more at ease living with us. He was no longer as anxious as he had been before. Just as I thought everything was getting better, and that Renee and I would soon be able to leave, the relationship between Colin and Renee suddenly broke down. That day, I was in the kitchen cutting fruit while the two of them played 1, 2, 3. Look this way in the living room. Occasionally, they would burst into laughter together, but most of the time, it was Renee's cheerful giggles I heard. I had to listen carefully just to catch Colin's voice. Not long after, the outside suddenly fell silent. A few seconds later, Renee's loud shout rang out. Sensing something was wrong, I hurried out. Renee shoved Colin hard with both hands, pushing him to the ground. Bad person. Renee shouted angrily. You're not allowed to come near my mommy anymore. She's not your mommy, she's Renee's mommy only. Colin sat on the floor, lowering his head in silence. I stepped forward to help him up, but Renee grabbed my hand tightly. Mommy, don't go over. He's a bad kid, he'll hurt you. As if afraid of putting me in a difficult position, Colin quickly pushed himself up on his own. His hands nervously clutched at his pant legs, his head still lowered. I had no choice but to crouch down and comfort Renee first. What happened, Renee? Her eyes were red with anger, on the verge of tears as she glared at Colin. Colin just said he's the one who made you fall into the sea. As she spoke, she tried to rush over and hit him again, but I pulled her into my arms. Renee struggled fiercely. Mommy got really sick right after she picked me up. The doctor said Mommy almost died. She was talking about those days when my fever wouldn't go down. At the time, Renee had been terrified. She even thought she had infected me with something from staying in the trash bin too long. I had told her the truth, that it was because I fell into the sea, so she wouldn't blame herself so much. Tears gathered in Renee's eyes as she glared at Colin with resentment. You almost killed Mommy. Renee is going to call the police and have you arrested. It took a long time to calm Renee down before I carried her into the bedroom, and throughout it all, Colin had stood quietly to the side. When I walked up to him, I gently touched his head. Colin, don't be upset. Mommy apologizes on Renee's behalf. Where did you get hurt? Let Mommy take a look. Colin finally lifted his head. To keep himself from crying, he had bitten his lip until it broke. Looking at me, he choked out, Mommy. Colin was wrong. Colin knows he was wrong. The next second, he burst into loud sobs. Mommy, I'm sorry. Aiden once said Colin had become too closed off after I left. He hadn't cried even once. Only that day on the street. When he saw me, did he cry for the first time? This was the second time. I didn't want to hurt Mommy. I've always liked Mommy the most. He cried heartbreakingly. Even if Mommy didn't want Colin before, Colin still loves Mommy the most. I crouched down and wiped his tears, feeling a pang of sadness. If only he had said these words before I fell into the sea. Back then, I kept trying to explain things to him, to clear up the misunderstanding, but when I pushed open his door, what I faced was the same cold indifference as Aiden's. Mom, next time you come into my room, could you knock and wait for me to let you in? Embarrassed, I apologized and forced a smile. Mommy just wanted to talk to you about what happened that day. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't want to hear it. Why? I stepped closer to him in a rush. Colin stepped back as well, putting distance between us again. Because you're a bad person. You've done bad things. He frowned slightly, looking at me with the same cold expression as Aiden. Then don't make excuses, he said. I was driven out of the room by my own son, completely lost. Aiden leaned casually against the doorway, watching me with a half smile. What is this, Francesca? Your karma for approaching me with an agenda? Day by day, I withered. Every time I tried to repair my relationship with Colin, I was shut out. Sometimes, I would even hear him laughing and playing with Aiden. Dad, Auntie Anna can't eat spicy food, you have to remember. Next time let's take her somewhere else. Dad, did you see that? Auntie Anna was so happy today. When she's happy, Colin is happy too. But the moment I appeared in front of him, his smile would fade. He would lower his head, softly call me Mom, and then immediately run back to his room. Standing in the living room, I could clearly hear the sound of the door locking behind him. Chapter 24. That day, Colin fell asleep from crying too much. I had been worrying about how he would get along with Renee in the future. But when he woke up the next day, he smiled at me obediently, just like usual, as if yesterday's emotional breakdown had never happened. Mom, could you call Dad for me? I was sitting by his bed, helping him tidy his freshly changed clothes. What's wrong? I want to go home. His eyes curved into a smile, as if he were happy. I miss Dad. Let him come pick me up. I didn't think much of it and called Aiden, although Colin had always been somewhat distant from him before. It was normal that after spending time together with Anna, their relationship had grown closer. Coincidentally, I was also planning to take Renee back to the suburbs. That night, Aiden came to pick Colin up. Before leaving, Colin hesitated and tugged at my sleeve. Looking up at me, he asked timidly, Mom, can you hug Colin? He stretched out his arms, raising them slightly. I paused, but still pulled him into my embrace. I didn't know what to say to him. My feelings toward Colin were too complicated. I still felt happy for him, sad for him, and wished for him to be healthy and safe forever. But I no longer wanted to live with him. Both of us knew it clearly, we could never truly let go of what happened. When we were together, I had to pretend I didn't care, while he had to constantly hide his guilt and regret. Colin hugged me softly. Mom, I'm sorry. I thought of his depression, patting his back. I lied to him for once. Mom isn't blaming you. Just get better soon, okay? Colin nodded vigorously, his smile bright. I will. I won't make Dad and Mom worry anymore. Chapter 25. After Colin got into the car, Aiden slowly walked toward me. You're leaving? I nodded. Francesca, if I had chosen you that day, would things be different now? His gaze was deep, filled with something heavy. He spoke softly. These days, I keep dreaming about that day. In my dream, I save you, and I explain everything about Anna to you. In the dream, you're willing to give me another chance. I glanced at my watch, wondering if Renee had finished watching her cartoons and was waiting for me to read her a story and tuck her in. I was a little worried she might be scared being home alone so late, so I answered him honestly, without indulging his hope. But in reality, I'm not willing. Anything else? If not, I'm going back. Just as my patience was wearing thin and I could barely maintain politeness, Aiden lowered his eyes and shook his head. Goodbye. I turned and left without hesitation. Only when I got home and opened the door, seeing Renee, did I finally feel a little at ease. She puffed out her cheeks. Mommy, where's Colin? I'm going to beat him up so he never dares to hurt you again. I laughed and pinched her cheek. He's already gone. We won't see him again. And he won't be able to hurt me anymore. Renee is amazing. She can protect Mommy now. Her eyes were firm. I will definitely protect Mommy. At the time, I thought it was just something a child said casually. Until half a month later, when I went to pick Renee up from kindergarten, a little boy giggled and tried to lift my skirt. Renee clenched her fist and punched him straight in the right eye, giving him a black eye. She hit hard, very hard. Renee stared at him and warned, "Little fatty, if you ever do that again, I will definitely smash your eyeballs." The boy was almost twice her size. Renee's own hand swelled from the impact before she managed to hurt him. When we got home, I gently applied medicine to the back of her hand, feeling distressed. Renee, don't do that next time. You got hurt too, it's not worth it. She shook her head, her little face serious. No, Mommy, he won't dare lift your skirt again. Because Renee made him afraid. If I just talked or scolded him, he would do it again next time. Renee's hand only hurts for a few days, but it can stop a bad person from hurting Mommy forever. That's very, very worth it. I bent down and hugged her. Mommy is really grateful to have met Renee. Renee hurriedly replied. Renee is even luckier. Because Mommy picked me. I didn't argue anymore, but I knew. It was the same for both of us. We met each other at the lowest, most desperate points in our lives, and became the first light in each other's world, so that we would no longer be trapped in an endless, freezing night. Extra, Colin. Chapter 1. Auntie Anna crouched in front of me and asked with a smile. How much do you like me? Do you like me more than your mom? I lowered my head, staring at the tips of my shoes. I was thinking about how to answer without making Auntie Anna unhappy, but maybe I wasn't smart enough. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't dare look up at her, feeling guilty. Then. Colin still likes Mommy more. Auntie Anna chuckled. Why? Your mom is a bad person. She used to bully me all the time. Because Mommy is the person who loves Colin the most in the world. So Colin will love Mommy the most too. I bowed to her again and said seriously. Auntie Anna, I'm sorry. My Mommy will definitely change. Please forgive her. Auntie Anna stood up, stretched lazily, and then said to me, depends on my mood. If I'm in a good mood, maybe I won't hold it against her. I silently remembered that. If Auntie Anna was happy, she would forgive Mommy. I started begging Dad again and again to take me to see Auntie Anna. I gave her the Christmas tree I made in class, and used my New Year money to buy her all the snacks I thought were delicious. I asked Dad to take us to the amusement park. Every day, I would look at her expectantly and ask, Auntie Anna, are you happy today? She ate her ice cream and nodded casually. I'm happy. I gave her a big smile. If Auntie is happy, then Colin is happy. She looked at me strangely. Of course I'm happy when I'm with your dad. I froze. But Dad belongs to Mommy. After that, she still said she was happy every day, but never mentioned forgiving Mommy again, until that time when she and Mommy were both hung up. I thought Mommy wouldn't get hurt anyway. If we saved Auntie Anna, she would definitely be grateful to Dad and me, and wouldn't blame Mommy anymore. But Mommy was hurt. She blamed me for not choosing her, and didn't want to come back from the sea anymore. Chapter 2. I always believed that Mommy wasn't dead, so I insisted on not crying. But after many days, when I finally saw Mommy again, I suddenly couldn't hold it in anymore. I cried out loud, but I didn't dare run over and hug her. She only glanced at Dad and me briefly, like we were strangers. I knew she didn't want me anymore. I cherished the time I spent with Mommy. I felt like I was stealing Renee's mom, so I took the initiative to do housework and tried not to cause trouble for her. As long as I was good enough, Mommy and Renee would accept me. Then I could stay with Mommy. I wanted to hear Mommy tell stories, to be lulled to sleep by her. But Renee wanted that too. I couldn't compete with her, but that was okay. I could quietly sleep outside their door. That way, I could still hear Mommy telling stories. From inside, I heard her gentle voice. Renee, time to sleep. Be a good girl and go to sleep. I hugged the teddy bear Mommy gave me, wrapped myself in a blanket, and lay on the floor, pretending that what I heard was, Colin, time to sleep. It felt so nice to fall asleep listening to Mommy's stories, because then I could dream of her. In my dreams, Mommy hugged me, only me. She was Mommy just for Colin. Chapter 3. But Renee found out that I was the one who caused Mommy to fall into the sea. She started to hate me, so I couldn't stay with Mommy anymore. I didn't want Mommy to be troubled because of me, so I took the initiative to leave. Not long after, when Dad wanted to go find Mommy, I stopped him. What? You don't want your mom to come back? He asked. I shook my head. No, she doesn't like us. If she comes back, she won't be happy. Dad, if you like someone, shouldn't you want them to be happy? Dad didn't say anything more, but he never let go of Mommy. Later, Dad often went alone to the seaside, the same place where Mommy fell. When I was 7, he encountered someone drowning there. Dad tried to save them, and was almost swept away by the waves himself. When the doctor came out of the emergency room, he didn't look relieved. He said to Grandma, "Although he's been resuscitated, his lungs have severe infections and irreversible damage. His lungs will be very fragile from now on." I didn't fully understand what the doctor said, but since Dad kept getting sick and going to the hospital, I knew it was serious. Sometimes, he even coughed up blood. His health was far worse than before. That day, after coughing up blood, he lay on the bed in a miserable state, his eyes red, asking me to call Mommy, hoping she would come see him. Holding the phone, I stayed silent and refused. Dad and I, we're both people who made mistakes. We don't deserve forgiveness. We don't deserve sympathy. And we don't have the right to disturb someone else's life.